DJ Longhair here in the house. Oh, what's up, everyone? Dude, I've been sorting like the last couple days, just nonstop. I filled up one binder. I think I need to get another binder for dragons, but I got a fat binder for demons, so I'm going through that right now. Oh yeah, this guy's right. It seems like the longest like splitter season ever. Kind of does. Right. So let me know, chat, if you run across any decent cards you like so far. There's this green one I'm looking for. I'm not sure where I found it, but it has like landfall and some other like shenanigans. There's like two of them in the set, and I found one where you can pay like 7 to turn it into a 7/7. And then it has landfall, put a counter on something. But there's something else that I saw recently. I was like, where is that card? I know it's green. 2-drop. Was there 2 that do that counter thingy? I don't know. Oh no. What's up with the sound, guys?
But we're going to be gabbing for another week here. So we are joined
he does exist.
for our final week of Final Fantasy previews by, of course, Gavin. And also Dylan, fresh off the plane from Japan. So we are going to be talking about a lot of cards today. So it's going to be a lot of commons and uncommons. We're filling in a lot of the gaps of stuff we haven't seen to give texture to the limited format. We're going to spend a lot of time talking about the different limited archetypes and what you should expect when you sit down to play in a pre-release or a draft, which is coming so soon. We are almost there. And so we're going to spend the entire time talking about that. We have, I don't know, 24 preview cards today.
A lot of preview cards. So many preview cards. When I saw them, I'm like, is this right? Is this the number of preview cards we have? There's so many preview cards.
They are commons and uncommons,
to
just set expectations. But they're still cool. They're still awesome.
And one rare.
And one rare, yeah. And we're going to spend a lot of time talking about that. But before we do that, 2 things. One, I want these 2 gentlemen to introduce yourselves and the work you did on the set, even though if you've been tuning in, you know Gavin. Go ahead.
Hey everybody, I'm Gavin Verhey, principal game designer on Magic the Gathering and the lead game designer for Magic the Gathering and Final Fantasy. And then of course, when I was like working on the set and trying to figure out all the cool creative concepts to put in, the man who was really the key to the operation right here.
He's so nice. Gavin's so nice. Hey everyone, I'm Dylan DeVenny. I'm the principal narrative game designer for the Universes Beyond creative team, and I had the great fortune and honor to be the narrative lead for the Magic the Gathering Final Fantasy set.
And super long-time Final Fantasy fan, right?
Absolutely, like literally lifelong. Some of my earliest memories go back to my old NES and my cracked SNES that I got at the flea market that came with every early copy of Final Fantasy at the time.
Awesome. All right, and then the second item is, we didn't do this last week, but it's time to talk about the ambassadors in the Magic community, creating all the cool content for you to enjoy for Magic the Gathering Final Fantasy. So these are our ambassadors for Final Fantasy. You can search for their content looking for #MTG Ambassador or #MTG Partner on your favorite social media platform. And many of them have already started creating some pretty cool stuff. So keep an eye out for these amazing creators.
Thanks, everybody.
So many awesome people on this while. I follow all these people. It's amazing.
And a ton of Final Fantasy fans in there as well. So now let's talk to the Final Fantasy fans who have tuned in and the Magic fans who have tuned into this show to learn all about these preview cards. So we're going to start out, we're going to go color by color through a bunch of new cards, and then we're going to move into talking about the limited archetype. So as we always do, let's start with white.
One of my favorite words on a card in the set, that's stuck basically the whole way through design, take 59 flights of stairs, right? You gotta love the flavor word, take 59 flights of stairs. Dylan, tell us about this story moment in Final Fantasy VII.
Yeah, so in 7, there's a part where Aerith has been removed from your party. The Shinra Corporation wants to take her for their own gains to find the Promised Land, and you have the option when you infiltrate the Shinra Electric Company to either take the elevator or go up 59 flights of stairs. Now, in-game, either of them have different game scenarios. I always choose the staircase portion. It is a hilarious, very long, real time. You have to move your character up 59 flights of stairs, and it was a really fun way to try to figure out how we were going to present making climbing stairs exciting on Magic art. But like finding the three kind of like emoticons of Tifa just blowing everyone away, Cloud midway, Barrett complaining the whole time. It was such a joy to bring to life.
And chat's going a little nuts over Gale Cat, actually.
Yeah, well, it's so cute. Look at this little guy.
Adorable.
You got a few things going on here, of course. You got a cute cat with wings, so
Yep.
we got to love that. You've got some callouts for artifacts, which is going to be really relevant for the artifact archetype for limited, which we'll get to in a little bit.
Yep.
And we've got, of course, Final Fantasy V and Gale of the Flavor Text.
We got Galov there. He had a lot of different quotes he wanted to use and a lot of just like nice RPG moments. When trying to figure out the flavor text for this card, there's just like a lot of moments where you go to a new area, he tells you about it, you fight the monsters in the area, and this is just a very charming, like very tropey RPG moment. And this art is just adorable. I love this guy.
Right, and the Gale Cat in Final Fantasy V, are those wings or are those mechanical?
Yeah, so the cats, they wear these little like wing suits.
right.
They kind of fly around on them, which is a very charming detail. Also plays into the fact that they care about artifacts in some capacity.
All right. Chat has set us up nicely for this transition because someone noted the set seems to be lacking non-creature spells. So let's go to blue and take a look at some, at least 2 non-creature spells, including that rare that you were mentioning, Gavin.
Yeah, so this is Memories Returning. So Final Fantasy VIII, I'm a Final Fantasy VIII fan and played through the game multiple times when I was a kid. And one thing I wanted to really capture is this moment of kind of going back into the childhood orphanage and the literal flashback on it. I've talked about this a few times now, but having these flashbacks in the game have flashback is a really neat little way to make that word actually relevant. So we put that on this card. And then what it is it's one of my favorite kinds of cards, which I don't get to do very often, but I try and sneak one in every set if I can, which are these kind of mini game cards. So it's sort of like a fact or fiction riff where you flip over 5 cards, you get one of them, your opponent takes one of them away, you get one of them, your opponent takes one of them away, and then you get the last one. So you're going up 3 cards every time, and you get the first, third, and 5th best card of your top 5 cards. A really fun little mini game, and you got that late game flashback cost too.
Yeah, just like Gavin was mentioning, like incorporating flashbacks on flashback was really fun. But especially for Final Fantasy VIII, it was really important to talk about memories and the full story
Must
of
be
all
rough
of the
if you get to
characters that
turn
go
9.
through this idea of losing their memories, why is it they forgot these memories, and the meta-narrative around them. 8 gave us a chance to do a lot of those more abstract, fantastical ideas. So even on a concept that is like easy to understand as like playing a mini game, trying to remember what's there, it's a nice creative through line that I was very happy to see in the file.
Yeah, and then you talking about limited. You want just a nice, solid removal spell. Stuck in Summoner's Sanctum is one of the best rate claustrophobia effects we've ever given you. 3 mana, flash, taps and freezes something, and its abilities can't be used. So that will really keep their stuff locked down.
Yep, and it's worth noting it's artifact or creature.
Yep.
A lot of these end up being just creature, but this hits both.
One thing that we noticed in the set is there's a number of really strong artifacts, right? There's the 5 crystals, for example, that you've already seen. So just having some commons to help shut down some of the strongest rares in limited helps make sure there are counterbalances to the bottom rares if your opponent opens them.
Also, whenever we show a 10 card, we have to showcase the wide range of casting characters that are in 10. So for those of you 10 fans, you will recognize a lot of the characters, the various other summoners that are along the journey that Yuna is trying to make on her pilgrimage, and we had to make sure we found a spot for them.
Yeah. All right, and then Rook Turret, just keep that one again in the back of your mind for the artifact.
We saw a white artifact card and a blue artifact card. Interesting.
Very interesting.
All right, let's move on to black. So we've got a number of black cards. We got a few slides for black
the
here.
eye looks
What
cool.
stands out to you on this one besides Cornered by Black Mages, which is my favorite card on this slide?
Cornered by Black Mages is awesome, right? I mean, this is sort of like a, I mean, it's not Ravenous Chupacabra because that would be ridiculous at common, obviously, but 3 mana, they sack something, and you get to 0
Hey,
one
what's
that
up,
makes them
Investable?
a cornerstone
K-Torque,
of the Black
TCGDude.
Mage deck, and it's a really strong card in its own right here.
And it's just like that cutscene. If I close my eyes and I think about 9 cutscenes, I will always come back to like you turn around during the invasion. It's like you were in the wrong neighborhood. It was a bad day to go out to the market because the black mages are here.
And then when it comes to the Ahriman, we'll come back to this a little bit, so keep this archetype in your mind, but there is a sacrifice archetype in the set. And this is kind of a cornerstone of that, lets you turn all your extra stuff floating around into cards. One thing I want to call out that is actually perfectly paired up on this slide is Job Select gives you both an equipment and a creature, right? It's 2 pieces of material for 1 card. So the sack outlets in this set often let you sack creatures or artifacts so that your job select equipment can do double duty. You can both eat the token and then eat the artifact later if you want to. So Ahriman lets you pick up a lot of cards as the game goes on that way.
Yeah, I'm interested. Dark Knight's Greatsword has, a unique equip cost. It's not something we see very often, if really ever. It's just paying life. You can only activate it once each turn. Gavin, talk a little bit about the idea behind that.
Yeah, exactly. So we were trying to figure out some stuff to do for the Dark Knight's Greatsword, and paying life seemed to make a lot of sense creatively for this. It was like, oh, that's a cool thing to move on, and it's awesome that you can play it and immediately snap it onto your flyer, which is you play your turn 2 flyer, turn 3 snap this on, and it's really strong. If you're wondering why you can only activate it each turn, like why do I want to pay a bunch of life? Well, it turns out that letting you pay unbounded amounts of life can create all kinds of challenges, especially when you look back at Eternal format sometimes, or even in this set there's like Cecil or what have you, which is you just want to slow that down a little bit here. So we put that on there. That was an ask from play design after we tried it out the other way. Do you want to talk about the creative of this card?
Yeah,
a bit,
so
Dylan?
that's what I was going to bring up. One of the things about being a Dark Knight in multiple Final Fantasy games is the fact that life as a resource, or the risk versus reward for greater, darker power. This card very specifically also does play well with Cecil, the fact that you can make your life go down and then bring inner darkness early on. We just have this wicked awesome moment of just seeing a Dark Knight in action. I always come back to this piece, just seeing the Chaos Bringer glowing with darkness. And it's that idea of darkness is very prevalent in Final Fantasy generally, the light versus the darkness in many titles. You can also see that in Ahriman, in the world of darkness in Final Fantasy III, and how it's presented. There's this very strange, very eldritch beauty to the darkness of Final Fantasy, and it was a delight to try and capture that in the various games that we had to find that lens through.
Like the Ahriman art is just gorgeous with the stars kind of in
It's
the
so
background.
cool, yeah.
There.
It's right before you actually fight him too. So it's the moment where he jumps at you, he has this really cool line, and then you go into the boss fight.
Very cool. All right, let's put up some more black cards. We've got Demon Wall, Hecht Eyes, one of the greatest names in the set. And then
That's a good question.
Strong black cards. What stands out to you here, Gavin?
Well, I want to call it one thing in particular that's kind of unique. Demon Wall is a 2-mana demon. You don't get a lot of those in Magic. There aren't a lot of 2-mana demons just running around all over the place. So this actually has some, if you're a demon fan building a demon deck, somebody got to fill out your curve a little bit, or you've got Unholy Annex rolling around maybe. You're
Demon
drawing
Wall,
cards,
huh?
you don't want to take damage. The Demon Wall is a nice one to have out. The other thing for Limited to keep in mind is it doesn't have to have, it's not like Monstrous. It doesn't have to have the last ability activated to be able to attack. It just needs a counter.
Yeah.
So if you play Demon Wall on turn 2 and then, we showed off Combat Tutorial a few days ago online, which draws you 2 cards, puts a counter on something. Well, your Demon Wall is ready to attack for 4 right away. So this card can actually do some pretty cool synergistic stuff. We're of course seeing some nods to a bunch of games here. Right? We've got a card for Final Fantasy II, Final Fantasy XI. You want to talk about the Coot Rub here for a second?
Yeah, so we've got a variety of monsters
Another
across
ooze,
a variety of
fun.
different games. 11 has the
And a zombie.
unique perspective of having multiple expansions that go into different flavors and different stories. So it was really fun to kind of dive deep and find monsters that headlined expansions. Specifically, if you were an 11 fan, every time a new expansion would come up, there would be a website to show you new screenshots and new art. And this is a monster that many of us around the office kind of remembered when they were teasing out our latest expansions, of seeing whoa, he's cool, he's interesting, but he kind of slots into Magic. It just feels like a Magic monster. And so we wanted to find a spot for more 11 creatures to kind of flesh out the world, to parallel some of the more well-known creatures like the Hecht Eyes, like the Demon Wall. And also, I just want to say, I am a huge fan of names and creature lines that are just Demon Wall, Demon Wall. It is what it is, and it was really fun to just yep, we're done, we did it. Thank you very much.
And then, of course, we talked a bit earlier about flashbacks as flashbacks. One of the most iconic there is.
Yeah, so Resentful Revelation was something that I think has been in the file forever. I think Yanni put it in, which was we're just not touching it. It has to be there. It's a moment of all moments when we talk about characters and their origins and villains in their origins and where they kind of start to follow that thread. Some characters are they're evil for the sake of being evil, and then they have a greater agenda. Right, Sephiroth is the story of a fallen hero, and this is the moment where we witness him fall. This moment is kind of inspired by events that in the original game, events in kind of the remakes of just that moment where you see someone and you can hear almost the glass crack right behind them, and the flavor text tells you all if you were familiar with the story.
All right, let's move on to some red cards. We have quite a few red cards to show off. including Choco Comet, which may be my favorite uncommon. But what else stands out to you here, Gavin?
Well, I want to call out a red uncommon that I really love. It's a very unique card for a red effect, which is called a Mountain Chocobo. This is really a backbone card in Limited. You'll see this card, I think, quite a bit. So it makes a 2/2 bird and gets you a mountain out of your deck. Red does not do a lot of going to search for mountains, and then it flashbacks again. Now, this is important because you'll see on the left here, there's this Blazing Bomb. Blazing Bomb gets a +1/+1 counter whenever you cast a non-creature spell and spend at least 4 or more mana. We'll talk about that later, but one of the archetypes is spending 4 or more mana for your non-creature spells. And so Call the Mountain Chocobo is a creature that is a non-creature spell and has flashback. So really strong here, really strong in the landfall deck as well. And it's a really nice glue card. Turns out it's very easy to get to 6 mana to flash it back when it finds you 1 mountain to start off with, right? So this is a really nice 4-drop and kind of a unique space for red. We haven't done a lot like this, especially at common.
I want to talk about Choco Comment because I agree. I love this card. I've also lost against this card a lot. Just like I lost against the level 99 red Chocobo in 12 a lot. Flavorfully and mechanically, it kind of recreates the experience of not being ready for that fight. And anytime I see it comes out, I'm like, I should have seen this coming. I absolutely get destroyed, and there's Chocobos on the battlefield. And there's a lot to be said about the creative and mechanical throughline and resonance of experiencing the same level of loss in the game of Magic the Gathering as you do in Final Fantasy. You're always triumphant, and eventually you grind enough or you come up with a strategy that gets you through. But there is that moment, like I know me and many other 12 fans remember going up against the Chocobo, getting hit by Choco Comet, like, oh, okay, well, that's the fight, that's it. And be able to kind of recreate that feeling and recreate that gameplay experience has been a delight that we've been able to do multiple times throughout the set.
And I think the Choco Comet literally never changed. Like, the set was handed off to me many years ago by Yanni. Shout out to Yanni. And I think this card literally never changed at all. It was just perfect for what it was trying to do.
Yeah.
I'll also just call out really fast. One thing we tried to do, especially at Common, was put in things that appeared in multiple games. So it's like, oh, it's really iconic. If you open a booster pack, there's a good chance you'll find something that you know. And the Hilgigas and the Blazing Bomb are cards that it's like, yep, you've seen a bomb in a number of Final Fantasy games. You've seen this, this 5/4 trampling haste in a number of games, and so you can it makes sense for them to be right here. The other thing I'll call about a bomb is yes, you can make all the jokes about opening a bomb common in your in your limited pools because it is in fact a bomb, not a bomb rare though.
All right, let's take a look at some more red cards.
So many red cards.
Yeah. So many red. This isn't even our last red slide. All right. I kind of want to start at the end here with Random Encounter. That one's got a pretty iconic name. Tell us about Random Encounter.
When you think Final Fantasy, when you think RPGs, you think Random Encounter, right? Just you're walking on the overworld, you hear the sound, the screen fades out, you're fighting against some enemies, and that's what's going to happen here. You mill 4 cards, and you get all the creatures into play for the turn. They attack your opponent, and then it can flash back later on down the road. So just truly, like, this is a card where you cast it, and sometimes it might do nothing. And sometimes you might cheat some huge stuff onto the battlefield. You never really know what happens when the Random Encounter comes to play.
In particular, when we were trying to figure out what to put on the art for Random Encounter, because it literally could be anything from any
Expensive,
game.
but an interesting
We
gamble.
wanted that kind of like classic era, that pixel era vibe. But also we wanted to, it's 6 mana, it's going to do something splashy, it's going to be something fun. So we wanted to do kind of like the end game Random Encounters where they've given you the stronger version of monsters, or they have higher health pools, and still kind of put some iconic creature designs in there. I'm very happy with where we ended up to be. If you do a playthrough of Final Fantasy II, you're likely to encounter something like this towards the end of the game.
Yeah. Chad is also moderately excited about Opera Love Song.
Yeah, this is a card that I'm so happy about. First of all, you just don't see enough love in Magic, right? So it's like a nice moment from the opera scene in Final Fantasy VI. Of course, the opera scene is a very iconic part of that game. And one of the things I really love, and one of the really nice nods that I was personally just very charmed with myself when I put it on the card, is in the scene, in the Opera Love Song part of the game, you have to correctly choose from like a bulleted list which answer to give. And I was like, oh, well, a card with a modal choice is actually perfect for this flavor and for this scene. So yes, you can either pump up some creatures, 2 different creatures, or exile your top 2 cards. Of course, 2, because it was just a really nice touch for this card.
if you aren't familiar with this scene, looking at it, you just kind of get it, and it's this beautiful moment, and the name tells you it all. So I was very happy. If I only got one line,
That was
I very
weird,
happy with that.
guys. I do not know what
And
happened.
yes, keep those red mages rapier and the Obsidian Elder in your head, because this will
Great.
be quite relevant when we get to one of the archetypes later on. Kind of a unique thing for this color combination to do. Red does a little more than the other half of it, but yeah, red-black is all about these non-creature spells, so keep that in mind.
I was going to say, those two look like they're doing several different things in the set, making tokens and keying off spells, so we will come back to that. All right, more red cards.
Woo!
Yeah.
Red cards! I want to talk about the Sandworm, which is something unique we do. Blowing up a land, okay, they get a land back. But the thing that is not immediately obvious on this card is, yes, you can hit their lands. For example, if you're fighting against a greedy town deck, maybe you hit their key town and keep them off of it. But I actually target my own land with this a decent amount of the time to trigger my landfall abilities twice. So say you have the Sabotender in play, which is a pretty innocuous little landfall trigger, but you hit your own land, boop, they take an extra point of damage. And as you've seen, there are much gnarlier landfall effects in the set than just that.
I want to jump to Unexpected Request because I love this scene. I think it's one of the most character-defining moments. It's early on in Final Fantasy IX where you're trying to get used to and learn these new characters like Garnet and Zidane. And this was such a nice flip of the script back in the day of how to tell story in games. That flavor text, by the way, I shall hereby do my best to kidnap you. Right, Zidane comes and he's here to kidnap Garnet to get ransom for her, but she actually, before he even gets a chance to do that, asks Zidane to kidnap her to get her out of the kingdom. What a great play on the trope. But that flavor text has been in the file when this card concept landed there, because we're doing this, and we never lock in flavor text. We have a process for it, but it was like, this is not changing. It gets to stay here. This is the scene. I can envision it, and so this card came out very perfect. Same thing with the conversation with Thunder Magic. It was like, well, we're going to draw lightning, lightning magic on the art. Like, what character should we be drawing using Thunder Magic? And I remember a couple people asked me that. I was like, well, we're going to draw lightning using lightning, right? Like, we kind of have to do that. And so this was another fun moment of deciding what classic characters or what classic mages or what classic roles that we want to showcase on these kind of tiered cards. And for me, it just made sense that if you told your friend, oh, who's this character? Oh, her name's Lightning. Oh, she casts lightning? I understand.
I believe the playtest name for Unexpected Request was Zidane Kidnaps, in quotation
In quotes,
marks.
yeah.
But that was that way for a very, very, very long time, which I thought was great. I want to call out on the Thunder Magic as well. We saw the Blazing Bomb a moment ago that wants you to cast spells with mana value 4 or greater. These tiered spells are a great way to do that, because the key is it's actually not caring about the mana value of the card. It cares about how much mana you spent to cast it. Right. So if you play Thunder Magic with the Thundara mode, you're good. And one of the tricks is, well, how many mana value 4 or greater spells can you put in your deck? There's a lot of ways to cheat it here, right? You've got these tiered spells, you have job select equipment, even flashback costs that are high, for example, will trigger those cards. So I know it sounds tricky to cast a bunch of high mana value spells. It is actually a lot easier in this set than it sounds like.
Cool. All right, that is it for red cards. Let's move on to some green cards. We got some chocobos of course, including their very own racetrack and a kick. Gavin, what stands out to you here?
Yeah, well, the racetrack, of course, iconic in Final Fantasy VII. Gotta have it, right? If you've ever played with Zendikar's Royal, I believe is the name of the card. This is like that, but an artifact, and the birds gets a +1/+0 when you play lands. So really nice if you're drafting the landfall deck. This is kind of you play this, and it's just an endless swarm of chocobos your opponent has to deal with. But even if you're not, it's just a great 5 mana common. One thing we like to do with our landfall decks as well is make sure that you can reset your lands. You kind of pick them back up and play them again. It's a great way to keep your land drops, keep making land drops in the late game, even if you don't want to be drawing lands. And so the Chocobo Kick lets you do that by letting you pick up a land to double the amount of damage. Sometimes you'll pick up the land even if you don't need to do the damage, just so you can replay a land later on down the road. And of course, a kicker card with kick in the name. It really comes together.
Yep. Yeah, and this is specifically in Final Fantasy IV, if you're wondering why a Chocobo is in the midst of combat. Chocobo is a summon in Final Fantasy IV that Rydia can summon on the battlefield, and this is a boss fight that you can get involved into. And so when we were trying to figure out how to incorporate more Chocobos into the set, certain games allow them to be more than a mount or more than a party member, and this was a really kind of fun way to show it off. And then also just kind of going over to Airship Crash, we actually had a really long conversation about which airship to show crash. Because if you have an airship, it will crash. It's a great story, it's super dramatic, it could have been a lot of moments. But when we were kind of discussing it's going to be in green, I think we both kind of went to 9 and kind of being in the forest, seeing that kind of cutscene, seeing the feedership kind of in that smoke and kind of Zidane walking around surveying it, it just kind of felt right. But we had plenty of concepts. Plenty of concepts for Airship Crash.
It's just such an iconic airship crash.
Yeah,
you know?
yeah.
Well, I do think that's a really good example of kind of the love and care that goes into this set. Because I mean, this is a common. It is a card that we've seen versions of in most Magic sets mechanically. But you all spent time deciding which air crash this is and talking about that. And so I think that's a really good example.
It's those in conversations, and you say it so greatly, like, it's a common, and it's like, yeah, it is, and everyone's going to see this a million times, and it's going to be in your sideboard, and you're going to use it a lot. And so those moments sometimes almost matter the most of, like, we have such a bevy of options. What's the moment, what's the scene, what's the spread that we're going to get across all of our commons to make sure that texture feels correct. It feels like Final Fantasy.
And at Common especially, I mean, it's a great lenticular kind of design thing, where if you know the moment and you know the story beat that it's hitting, you're like, wow, I get this, it hits for me. If you haven't played 9, you read Airship Crash and killing an artifact, enchantment, or flyer, and you're like, yeah, that makes sense. I understand what's going on here. One thing I do want to touch on, Dylan, do you want to talk about the Bard's bow a bit? Because a Bard giving reach, if you don't know Final Fantasy XIV, you're like, what is going on with this reaching Bard?
Yeah, so in Final Fantasy XIV, one of the jobs that you can get, you can start as an archer in that game, and then you become a bard. Bards in that game are very special. They obviously have musical abilities, and they have ballads that they can use as one of their magical abilities, but they are bow users. And a lot of their abilities and efforts revolve around using the bow and using arrows in that capacity. And so it was kind of like a flavor bend and flavor through line of what we understand Bard to be as a word, and the very specific context of it being inside of Final Fantasy, and then one step further being a job or a class inside of Final Fantasy XIV very specifically. And so that's why in the art we wanted to put you in like the Bard artifact gear. So if you're a Bard player, or if you have Bards in like your raid group, you would recognize that, and using one of the cool, very obviously like kind of archery moves that the characters or players will use very often in that game.
All right. Well, let's see some more green cards.
Yeah, so here's just a nice cast of things you might have to battle against at some point in Final Fantasy. I know a lot of folks have asked, where is the behemoth?
Another
Well,
frog.
here it is. It is big. It is a great top-end card. It has a Shades of Palaka worm. You know, it's 7 mana, 7/7. It comes down. It'll refund you a card or kill off their artifact or enchantment, which is just a nice little curve topper there.
Big old beastie, okay.
Just this range of monsters makes me personally very happy as a Final Fantasy fan. Seeing the very different games, various different interpretations of them, the interpretations
or
of
mana
their personality,
plant.
where you fight them, where their flavor text comes from, and it's just
And a
like,
plant
come on,
beast.
the Google Gardener just makes me so happy. Like, he's just,
It's making chat happy.
oh, good. I'm glad you're happy.
I look forward to people just like putting, booster packs where that is. Like,
Yeah,
whatever card you wanted to
This,
open.
yes, I got it.
This is doing the pose. It
Yeah,
really feels-
absolutely.
I mean, these guys, the Goobus are, of course, you don't really want to encounter one. They're kind of gnarly monsters, but this is nice. There's a gardener. He's
Yeah,
so
he's
nice.
just having a good time.
He's having a good old time. And the 7 or more lands thing as well. Like in the blue-green deck, you will go along. Red-green, you will go along. So this guy becoming a 6/6, the Gigantode, is no joke.
Yeah. Yep, and keep the card on the right in the back of your mind for another archetype as well.
The Ochu we'll get to in a little bit, so stay tuned.
Yeah. All right, and then one last group of green cards here, including Side Quest Raise a Chocobo.
We were at PAX, and a number of amazing people came up to us, and they were so sweet and so nice. And they were like, oh, thank you so much. That was so fun. And then you could spot the 14 player, because they would be like, are there any Loporrits? Do we have Loporrits? Are we going to have the little bunnies in here? And we were just like, we'll talk about it in the future, hopefully. And here you go. Here's your little guy. This is post, Endwalker, where the Loporrits are able to travel around, their mission fulfilled. And we just wanted a nice, fun, cute moment. Loporrit Scout, Rapid Scout, very clean, very understandable, and some flavor text if you're familiar with this particular quest line.
Yeah, and I love how this ends up playing well in one of our archetypes we'll get to later as well. So it's a cute little rabbit, but it does hit hard. So don't underestimate the rabbits if you learned anything from Bloomburrow. Yeah. Side quest Raise a Chocobo, of course you got to have it, right?
Yep.
You got to have the Chocobo side quest from Final Fantasy VII. And as the bird guy, I was like, I want to make this bird deck work. So I kept making cool bird cards that I liked, and this was a natural fit, right? The side quest that you try and go on to collect a bunch of birds, and then turns into that black Chocobo, which it's got two things that you should be careful about reading here. One is that you get to go find any land, not just a basic land.
Well.
So whatever awesome land you have, you get to go find. And two, you're probably used to reading, your Chocobo gets +1/+0 when you play a land. this landfall affects all your birds. So all your birds get +1/+0 when you play a land on the black chocobo. So really strong if you get to transform it. And then, of course, my final little thing to point out is it transforms at the beginning of your first main phase. So if you're like me and it puts some flashing birds in your deck, like there's a couple in Bloomburrow that do that, you can actually sneak it into untap with 3 birds and sneak in your 4th in time for this to transform.
One of the other things to call out too, when we were doing the concepts and art for the Black Chocobo, and then also back to Mountain Chocobo, in Final Fantasy VII, every Chocobo of coloration has a very specific function in the overworld that allows you to go through different terrains that you're blocked off from doing. So the Mountain Chocobo, very specifically, we showed crossing a mountain. The Black Chocobo, we're showing very specifically crossing through river and waterlands. So we just wanted to make sure that yes, it's a cute bird, yes, it's a cute mascot, but we want to make sure that we were showing every Chocobo in the environment in which the player would, raise them and then use them for. And then similarly with like Precious Wanderings, if you're not familiar with the character, she is a character full of spirit, full of fight, full of tenacity. And in the story, she's just constantly disappearing, constantly just leaving the hero, constantly just like, all right, I'm bored now, I'm going to do something else. And so we were trying to figure out like a concept for like, ramp and towns and things like that. We had a couple of ideas, and then we were talking about 11, and then we just got on this conversation about like, oh yeah, like she's just kind of constantly disappearing, constantly visiting new places. And it just turned out to be, I think, a very charming match for the mechanics here.
And one thing you don't often see from a mechanical side is this is an instant ramp spell that puts a counter on a creature.
Yep.
So this is actually a sneaky combat trick, right? It'll trigger all your landfall stuff. It'll put a counter on the middle of combat. So this card is I think a sleeper in limited in the set. It's in the red-green landfall deck. We'll get to in a little bit. It's a nice card, but also just middle of combat, get my land, put a counter on something. Surprisingly versatile.
All right. That is it for green cards. Now let's take a look at a pair of multicolor cards, both quite strong. Let's start with Cloud of Darkness.
Yeah, you've heard Cloud a lot in this set, but this is maybe not the Cloud you were expecting. Dylan, talk to us about this character.
Yeah, so this is the final boss in Final Fantasy III. Xande is a big, important character. The World of Darkness is a big, important character. And the Cloud of Darkness is kind of a manifestation of the World of Darkness. And very specifically here, we can see here she's using the Particle Beam ability, which you can see as kind of her flavor word. But we also drew it in the art because there's actually a great game over animation that if you lose to Particle Beam, you get this kind of scene where we're seeing all the heroes kind of like warped in this light, flashing blue, and then it fades to your game over. So perhaps in this art in particular, your level wasn't high enough and you want to grind a little bit. But that's kind of the moment I always remember when I think of Cloud of Darkness because I died to her quite a lot.
And as you might intuit from reading this card and just drafting enough times, black-green is about the graveyard in this set. It's true of mini Magic sets, but especially this one. So you want to get permanent cards into your graveyard. We'll talk about that more in a second. Cloud of Darkness, 5-mana 3/3 flyer that kills off your opponent creature. Nothing to be sad about. On the right-hand side, we got Geot?
Yeah,
Geot, right? Geot, King of the Dwarves. This guy has some funny stuff going on. When he enters, you get to rummage. When an equipment enters, you get to rummage. Red, white, love equipment. But I do want to call out for all you dwarf fans out there, this is the King of the Dwarves. I was like, we have to put some dwarf matters on this card. And so we did it. In fact, there is a common dwarf, it has Lally-Ho in the flavor text, that this pairs with. So you'll mostly rummage, of course, when you play your equipment, but every now and then you'll get a bit of dwarf synergy, and thanks to Dylan for making that happen. I was like, we got to have a common dwarf.
100%. No, it was like I was almost begging you to like one day show up at my desk and be like, what if we did this? Yes, I'm ready. The concepts are good to go. I've got the scene. The tanks are here. I was very happy we were able to sneak this in.
And of course, suiting up your double striker with equipment is exactly where you want to be.
Yeah, it's no joke.
All right. Well, let's move on to some artifacts. We've got some pretty interesting selections here. Where do you want to start, Gavin?
Well, let's start with the legendary artifacts here. Let's start with the ring. So this is a mana rock and icy manipulator effect all in one, right? So on turn 4, you're going to be ramping up a little bit, casting some of those big spells, getting your behemoth out a turn early, something like that. But the problem with these mana rock cards is always like, okay, well now I'm out of cards in my hand, I'm out of stuff to do. Well, you can pay just a little bit of life to lock down whatever your opponent has and kind of icy manipulate it.
Interesting.
Yep.
Yeah, and in game, towards the end of it, when you finally get access to this ability, it's a moment where
it was a
not only has
3-drop.
access to the ring, and it has a wealth of power and ability behind it, but you are using your life force, you're using your health to utilize this. So that paying that one life is a nice connection to that moment where you are desperately using this to go up against every demon on your own.
And then we also just have, the colorless job select equipment, right? So Monk's Fist comes down. It's kind of your, often in sets we do these 2-mana, 2/1 colorless creatures, which is kind of what this is. But once again, it's 2 pieces of material for 2 mana, and you get to move it around, put it on something else if you want to. So it really creates for some great fodder to sacrifice away, or just, have an extra artifact on the board.
Hey, what's up, Posy? How you doing, brother?
And it's also in the Final
Just
Fantasy
checking out the
1,
last bit of
original
spoilers,
6
man.
gobs that you could pick from.
What,
And so you can
pre-release
see
is next week?
This is kind of our interpretation of the very classic sprite that the black belt or the monk kind of begins as, in a very the background of all the Final Fantasy 1 job select cards are all very specific dungeons
another demon,
or
Iron
temples
Giant.
or overworld areas. So we're very curious if people want to hunt across those cards and see where we selected to put them.
Yeah. And then Pandora here, as Chad has pointed out, that is a legendary common.
Yeah, we do not do this very much. But, well, first of all, before I talk about the design of it, Dylan, why don't you fill everyone in on what the Lunatic Pandora is?
Yeah, so I'm going to be very sensitive about the story behind this. It's a very critical lore point and plot point in Final Fantasy VIII. You can kind of see that Zell is telling us in the flavor text what it does. It has a very inspired design, and it has this very kind of like haunting presence throughout the story of Final Fantasy VIII. I won't say anything further than that because it's definitely, if you're waffling if you should go play 8, again, you should go try it out. But it is a very unique creative with a unique design. I think that's what we'll go.
Yeah, absolutely. So, it's common. It's got a bit of unique stuff going on. You can surveil a little bit and then eventually sacrifice it. One of the things is we worked, as we mentioned before, in our other streams, we worked really closely with Square on this set. We had a lot of great back and forth feedback and collaboration. And at one point, we showed them the Lunatic Pandora, and they were like, this should really be legendary, right? It's an iconic part of the game. It's a super iconic thing. And we're like, all right, well, you know what? They're the experts, and they're right. Let's make it legendary. And, you usually don't want to play a ton of these in your limited deck anyway, and you can sacrifice it once you get to 6 mana, so you can use your second one there. But do not, just don't play your second one. That would go poorly for you. And then Iron Giant, of course.
Iron Giant.
Yeah.
I mean, it is what it says.
He's a big guy. They're big in game. They hit you hard, and that's what he's going to do.
Dylan, question from Chad. Why is this a demon and not a giant?
Yeah, so that's
we talked about this.
Yeah, we had a lot of discussions about this very specifically. So it's a fantastic question, and that is where my instinct went to. But we did have a chance to talk to the Final Fantasy 15 team about creature types, like every team that we did, and kind of the creative behind everything. And so sort of the lore inside of Final Fantasy 15 and many other games is that even though the name is Iron Giant, this is very specifically a demonic manifestation that becomes imbued inside of some either statue, suit of armor, or other sort of kind of vessel. And so that's the kind of next layer. If the name should mean something, we're going to go talk to the team, and then they're going to tell us, well, this is what we were imagining. This is the very specific lore to the world. And so when you're looking at this, the artifact side of this is the demon inhabiting something and becoming that expression of the Iron Giant.
Yeah.
Yeah, I've seen a lot of discussion about, say, creature types and things like that online, and I really want to, I think it's amazing. We got to work with Square, and we ran everything through them, all the names, the flavor text, the creature types at all. They got to give feedback on it and let us know cool little flavor nods like that.
Right. Yeah. Because that's where we started too. That's what we put in the file, and we sent it over, and they were like, "Hey, so in our world, XYZ," and it's like, "Yep, that's awesome." We can be as fans and do as much research as we want, but they made the game, and they know it even better than us, right? So we got to collaborate on those kinds of things. But it's a fantastic
Move on, guys.
And how cool is it to be able to send over stuff to Square and have them be like, "Oh, actually, let me tell you the deep lore."
You didn't read this bestiary entry. Well, here it is. I wrote it.
Oh, it's so cool. It was so cool. What an amazing experience.
All right, and then our final 2 cards before we start.
Hey, Bob, how you doing?
Draft archetypes. We've got a pair of lands here, 2 towns. Tell us about these.
Well, the Crossroads Village is a riff on something we've seen a number of times now, right? The land that enters tapped, you choose a color, and it adds 1 mana of any chosen color. But this one is a town, so if you're drafting the town deck, as you'll see in a moment, the town deck is kind of blue-green base, but really you'll end up playing 3, 4, or even 5 colors. So having that kind of flexibility on it is really nice.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and then the flavor text here, you've got to destroy the Dreadnought. This is in Final Fantasy II. This is one of the things back in the day when you would play an early Final Fantasy game. You'd walk into a new town, and every NPC would have a line of dialogue that was trying to point you into a direction, give you a quest. And so when you go into Bafsk, which is the village that we have depicted here, one of the earliest NPCs you can talk to, he just like grabs Furion by the shoulders, like, you've got to destroy the Dreadnought. And so that's just like one of those funny things that kind of sat with us and kind of stuck with us. And we were trying to figure out like, oh, what do we say about this town? And we kind of thought about like, well, once you go here, you kind of kick off this quest to go find the Emperor's airship, the Dreadnought. And that's kind of what we wanted to move forward with.
Eden, on the flip side, is a land I think is a very, it's kind of a unique mechanical thing for a land to be able to do here, of milling some cards and then getting something back. If you're drafting the town deck, the game will go along. You don't want to be able to recur your win condition. But also, it's not just for towns. There's all kinds of decks that will want this. The black-green deck may want to pick up a permanent from its graveyard. Or frankly, any 2-color deck just was happy to have 5 mana, mill 2 cards, and get my best permanent in the mid-game. So really, really nice here. And of course, Eden sacrifices, so there you go.
Yeah, and then the flavor text says it all, right? The city, Cocoon's capital, shares its name with its Fall Sea patron. So if you're familiar with the events of Final Fantasy 13, this is an area that is alluded to a lot, that you see a lot. There's a particularly super cool cutscene that happens here, and of course it's the site of one of your final fights in the game.
All right. Let's move into talking about the limited archetypes. I do want to say before we do that, to everyone out there, oh, why isn't this card? Where's this card? Previews are not over. This is not the last day of previews. They are going tomorrow and Thursday, with the full card image gallery going up on Friday. So if there's still something you're looking for, could still be out there.
There are a few legends still to be shown up,
Yes.
so stay tuned, stay tuned.
All right, back to limited archetypes. So we had the graphic up there for a moment. There it is again. So this is a quick overview. We're going to go through each of these individually, so you don't have to stay on this very long. You're going to find this insert in Play Booster boxes. So when you head to pre-release, when you pick up your pre-ordered boxes, you're going to get one of these and be able to look at it and have a handy little reference. But let's go through these one by one, and we're going to go in this order. So let's take a look at.
Let's stretch it out.
First,
Keep us waiting for cards.
Yeah.
Okay.
blue archetype.
So the blue-white artifacts deck is, well, you want to play artifacts. It makes sense. But there's a lot of ways to accrue artifacts in this set, especially job select equipment, right? The job select equipment do great double duty as being creatures that also come with an artifact attached to them. So this cargo ship, for example, can help power out a job select equipment early, which is great, and all manner of other artifacts you might have lying around. Galakat, we talked about earlier. This card is actually a house. 3 mana, you know, it's really easy to make this a 3 mana, 3/3 flying vigilance. Getting 2 artifacts in this set is not
They showed that
very
a little
difficult.
bit earlier.
So really, really strong common here for white. And then Tidus as your signpost, or one of your signpost uncommons here. Tapping stuff and getting bigger, really strong.
I've got nothing to add, but this is probably my favorite flavor text in the main set. Every blitzer knows when you got the ball, you gotta score.
One other thing I'll just call out about our gold uncommons in this set, because I think a lot of people are used to these being the signposts. That's kind of how it works here, but there is a bit of a difference from normal. So every color gets 2 gold uncommons. One of them is like the direct signpost, like Tidus here. Clearly it wants you to play artifacts, tap, and get through and kind of do tempo-y stuff to your opponent. The other gold card can, sometimes it's on theme, but many times it's just like a strong limited card, right? You don't have to be doing the archetype to be able to put this card in your deck and have it be good, because sometimes you're drafting blue-white, but you're not drafting artifacts. You're drafting red-white, and you're not drafting equipment, and it's just a generically strong card. It'll be good in that deck. We made sure that they all were still strong if you're doing
Posy.
that
I
thing.
know.
But they're not necessarily
like,
all
great.
having the words of the archetype on them. So if you're seeing some of them and wondering like, oh,
Show
what's
us
up with
some
this card?
cards.
Well, that's what's going on there.
All right. Next up, we're going to look at the white-black archetype. Yeah, what's going on here?
Yeah, so
Hey,
this
what's
is
up,
your
Robert? You
sacrifice
at work?
deck. So this likes sacrificing creatures and artifacts. So as I mentioned earlier, the job select equipment are awesome for this. White Mage's Staff comes with 2 pieces of material. The Ariaman can throw both of them away to draw you cards. And then Judge Magister Gabranth, who I know is a character many folks were excited for from Final Fantasy XII, is here as your signpost uncommon, and he gets big and hits hard.
Yeah, it was kind of important for us early on to figure out the spread of legends across the set, of course. But then when we had the next conversation, well, who's supposed to lead archetypes? Who's supposed to be the thing? Oh, I understand what we're going to do with this draft archetype. I think Gabranth was one of the easier ones to land on, because I feel like Black-White is such a fantastic color identity to explain his character and also his mechanics, and then also how he plays inside the story. So I think this was one of the earliest ones that we landed on, that we were very confident that if you're either familiar with the source material or if you just looked at the
Oh,
guide,
nice.
you would understand what you're going to do, how you're going to do it.
Yeah, great card. I see it on a lot of tables in limited. And to your point, right, making it an uncommon signpost means a lot of draft. If you're drafting, it's going to be a card you were looking for. You're going to be really excited about it in limited. So pretty cool. We're able to match those up with the archetypes.
Yeah. Well, and Gavin, I want to emphasize something you've said a couple times is I love the double duty that Job Select does, especially on the white equipment, where you need white equipment for your equipment deck, which gives you need often balancing equipment and creatures is challenging, but then in the white-black archetype, you get two things that you can sacrifice if you need to.
Job Select is really pulling a lot of weight as glue in this set. We'll get into some other archetypes later that also love it for totally different reasons. So turns out having non-creatures that are creatures that create two pieces of material, really structurally important for this set.
All right, let's move on to blue-black, which is looking to do controlling sort of things.
Yeah, so blue-black is control. You might be like, just control? No special kind of control? It's kind of classic Magic. We wanted to harken back to some classic limited archetypes in this set. So maybe if you're coming into Final Fantasy for the first time, or you played a while ago and are coming back, you're coming to Magic for the first time, excuse me, you can find something that is like really easy to grab onto. I was like, oh, I understand what's trying to go on here. So the blue-black deck is just control. It's just kill your opponent's stuff, lock it down, draw cards, gain life, play the long game. But I do want to call out, if you're looking for a little hook, that there's a bunch of flashback stuff you'll want to end up doing in this deck because the game tends to go long. So if you want, you can use a little bit of self-mill, a little bit of looting, like on lock here, to dump your flashback cards into your graveyard and get extra value out of them, right? 'Cause if you
Yeah,
loot away a
Blake's here
flashback
this
card,
week,
it's
bro.
kind of like you still drew an extra card there. So there's a bit of controlling that can happen there, but overall, just want to play the long game, kill your opponent's stuff, and kill them with a big creature.
Yeah, even to your point, putting Lock here as one of the archetype faces, you see a black-blue rogue, and if you're a Magic player, you're like, oh, okay, I kind of get that. I kind of know that. I've played that before. It's got that touch. That's cool. But even like down to the aesthetic of Lock, wearing a lot of black and highlighted by a blue, a lot of these character designs really come to life in the mana colors, either in the personality or visually in their costume design. So again, when a lot of conversations we had were, you're a Final Fantasy fan, we're going to introduce you to Magic. What is every possible way we could help introduce you to Magic? What are the things that we can teach you about wider Magic? I think Lock is a very good example of a very subtle way that we were able to do that.
All right, next up is one of my favorite archetypes from this set. We've got blue-red, which is doing some cool things here.
Yeah, so we went from a very classic archetype to a very unique archetype. I feel like every limited format gets one or two archetypes that you're like, huh, I haven't seen this before. That's kind of fresh and interesting. And often what happens there is we're like trying to figure out the last couple archetypes, and we're looking at all the other things we have and like what kind of fits in naturally. And we ended up with this very unique deck, this blue-red deck that wants you to cast non-creatures and spend at least 4 mana to cast them. Now, there's a lot of ways to get around that, as I mentioned earlier. Job Select equipment, once again, pulling incredible double duty here, right? Those 4 mana Job Select equipment will trigger these guys. Your tiered spells will trigger these. If you spend at least 4 mana to cast them, your flashbacks will usually trigger these. And it's sort of like this fun little tempo-y deck where you play cards like Blazing Bomb or Ultros, and then you start casting your big spells, and quickly your opponent ends up under this cavalcade of like you getting an advantage, your stuff getting larger, Chateau to refund you cards, and so on. Ultros especially, Obnoxious Octopus is the right name for this guy because stunning all your opponent's stuff is brutal.
I've been the bad guy internally. This is the deck I always play. I know I should branch out. I know I should test other things, but every time I go and I play this archetype, and I always have so much fun. And do not let me get a copy of Ultros. It's exactly like going up against him in every game. You're like, all right, I get it. And I've got all the one-liners memorized, so I always say them to everyone. They're like, yeah, cool. Is it my turn?
The other thing I'll call out with Ultros is you might be seeing that 8 mana call out. It's like, when am I going to have an 8 mana non-creature spell in my deck, Gavin? Well, I'll say once again, tiered lets that happen kind of naturally, right? So you put the tiered spells in your deck. You have the 4 mana mode, great, no problem. That'll trigger it the first time. But in the long game, if you flood out, you can use the expensive mode to actually octopus up Ultros. Of course, 8 counters critical for our octopus friend here, and you'll get both those triggers there. So really nice.
Well, and you've also got flashback costs as well.
Yes.
Some of them hit 8 mana. Yeah, a lot of cool synergy there. All right, let's move on to this. Might be my second favorite archetype. Black-red, which is, again, this is a unique take on Black-red as well.
Yeah, so normally we do the kind of prowessy stuff in blue-red, but when we came up with the Black Mage tokens, they were such a hit. Everyone loved the Black Mage tokens. I went to the Council of Colors and was like, can we do it in this set as Black-red? And they did a little bit of work and gave me some parameters, but they were like, yes, you can do it prowess deck as Black-red. So you have all these non-creature tokens around that just ping your opponent, which feels so great for a Black Mage, right? You're casting your non-creature spells and boop, just death by 1,000 cuts. But you can also pump them up as Circle of Power does here, you know, +1/+0 and lifelink. And then this uncommon, Black Waltz #3, that is the card you want. If you untap with this, you will be just dealing tons of damage to your opponent.
I think one of the things that I was very excited about with this archetype was to show the variety of Black Mage designs across Final Fantasy. When you look at like archetypes and jobs and classes, I feel like towards the top, Black Mage is one of the most iconic, easy to understand. Oh yeah, I remember that, and it's kind of almost in every single game, and it has an aesthetic in every game. So making it a full archetype was a great way to send a love letter to this aesthetic, to this kind of like cultural touchstone of design of what Final Fantasy is and what people iconically relate to it. And so being able to do Black Mages across 4 and 9 and 14 and a variety of other titles, I was so excited that that was going to be like a full dedicated archetype. And I will definitely say do not sleep on this. There is a lot of things that you can do. We've reviewed some cards in the past that really make this a very powerful archetype. I won like my first internal play day with this deck. So lots of love to have here, especially for Black Waltz.
Yeah. And just 2 other quick call-outs I'll give on the Black Mages, because I think it's kind of fun. The first one is the Circle of Power impacts all your wizards. Well, keep in mind that the job select equipment out there do confer their creature types, and so if a creature is holding, say, a Black Mage's Rod, it will pick up that bonus. So there's a tiny little bit of type-based synergy happening here, so that's pretty cool. And then finally, just once again, job select equipment, double duty here, right? You cast your job select equipment spell. It is a non-creature. They take a damage. It really hooks into everything. That's why they're in all 5
hell
colors.
yeah, Robert.
You know,
that's
what
you got to do, bro.
Yeah. My favorite thing about this slide is the flavor text on Black Waltz #3. The card itself deals 2 damage for each non-creature spell, whereas the tokens deal 1. And then the flavor text, you fool, do I look like some lowly Black Mage soldier?
I mean, you look like 2 lowly Black Mage soldiers. We did talk, I did petition to try and get this to deal 3 damage, but we playtested with that one time and it was ridiculous. So that did not fly.
Yeah. All right, let's move on to Black-Green. As noted, this one's going to care about the graveyard.
That's right,
and
Caustic.
Specifically, it really cares about getting permanent cards into your graveyard. Of course, there are some double wins here. If you mill a flashback card, that's not a permanent card, but hey, you're getting a bit of extra value out of that. But you do want permanent cards generally for cards like the Grand Pulse Ochu and Cloud of Darkness that are keying off the number of permanents in your graveyard. Grand Pulse Ochu, for example, you might be like, man, an 8-mana activated ability, that's so slow. But this is a great card. You either trade with it early, in which case, by the way, that's +1 permanent in your graveyard, or if your opponent kind of plays around it or you draw it late, you're like, no problem, I suddenly have an 8/8 creature that can attack starting next turn, which is really nice.
One of the things, too, you'll see in a lot of the Black-Green cards, especially when you're building this deck in Limited, is you'll have like a lot of monsters or a lot of enemies or a lot of mobs that you fight a lot in Final Fantasy. So the Shinra Reinforcements is a great example of that. In 7, you're going to fight hundreds and hundreds of these guys. And then if you're going to play the remake, you're going to fight hundreds and hundreds of them more. And so being able to fill out certain colors and certain archetypes with things that you do a lot, things that you see a lot, things that are resonant enough, was definitely something we had our eye on for a very long time of where to employ them, where to push, where to pull. But the Shinra Reinforcements to me kind of communicates like, especially in turn-based Final Fantasies, you fight a lot of the same monsters and same creatures multiple times. And so at common, you're going to see these monsters multiple times.
All right. Well, let's move on to the red-white archetype, which is all about equipment.
Yeah, well, here it turns out job set equipment, it doesn't just trigger things and be a piece of material. It also is, in fact, an equipment, which is what we want to be doing here in this red-white equipment deck. You, of course, are going to play your fair share of job select equipment, which, as Blake mentioned earlier, there's always this struggle with equipment decks. How do you balance your equipment and your creatures together to get enough? If you draw all equipment, your deck doesn't work. Well, the job select equipment bridges that in a really satisfying way. Now, a lot of them have high equip costs because they already come with creatures, which the weapons vendor, just no problem. 1 mana, toss that on to whoever I want.
Yeah, it was like a blast to figure out what kind of NPCs we want to bring in from Final Fantasy, what are their like, oh, are they shopkeepers? Are they blacksmiths? Are they, what kind of vendor are they? And bring them in and find very satisfying effects to kind of bridge the gap between what they do in the game, what they're going to do in Magic. And the weapons vendor very specifically is a card you're going to want for a wide variety of decks. He's helped me out quite a lot of times. And also trying to figure out what games they were supposed to come from. You'll see a lot of other cards we've already previewed are definitely trying to pull on that, like you're in town for the first time, right? This character specifically is from the Sector 7 slums, and so they're trying to kind of pull on that world building. They're going to do exactly what you expect them to do in some capacity.
And we kind of have this 5-card cycle at common, one for each color, that is just a townsfolk. We call them the townsfolk cycle. It's like this is a vendor or a shopkeeper or something like that you would find. Just because in any Final Fantasy game, you will find someone selling you weapons. So once again, just having that there at common is really nice to just nod, no matter if you've played that game or not.
Good RPG.
I do like the sword, though.
All right, we got 7 minutes to do 3 more archetypes.
We can do it.
We got
We
this.
can do it.
All right, red-green.
Landfall.
Landfall.
There it is.
It's not original, but it is fun. It is you get your landfall stuff into play, you play lands, you play cards that get you lands. Once again, that Call the Mountain Chocobo is a real linchpin card for this archetype. Just getting you an extra land, letting you make sure you're keeping your land drops late, and giving you a token. I also want to call out Ride the Shoe Puff, which I am so happy we got into the set. This is a card that it's a very fun thing to say. And another one of those cards we played early, put some counters on stuff, and when you flood out late, boom, you got a 7/7.
Yeah, it doesn't say that in the rules text, but there should be reminder text that says when you activate the 7 cost there, you do have to read the flavor text out loud.
Yeah.
You say all boards and you go full swing to win the game.
We'll get that in the comp rules.
Yeah, thank you.
All right, tell us about green-white. What do we have going on in this archetype?
Well, green-white wants to go wide, right? Kind of your classic green-white go wide archetype. So using this cute little Laporte Scout alongside Aerith Rescue Mission, suddenly that Scout is attacking for 6 damage on turn 4, so not too shabby. And then Renoa, of course, pumping a creature equal to all the creatures you control, which is pretty nice. So go wide, lots of things make tokens, and you can also just play creatures every turn, play a couple creatures, you'll trigger your effects.
Absolutely.
And finally, also, I keep saying this, but also one of my favorite archetypes. We've got the green-blue Towns Ramp archetype.
Also one of my favorite archetypes. This one is a blast to draft, kind of like Gates in Ravnica, if you've ever drafted one of those.
Yep.
A lot of cards with Town Riders on them. This Town Greeter is a Satyr Wayfinder that also picks up 2 life if you happen to grab a town. The Merchant here can loot early and then late. You can sack it away for cheap to draw a bunch of cards. And this Signpost Uncommon Omega taps and stuns one of your opponent's creatures for probably a long time.
Yeah.
Probably a long time.
Oh, yeah.
It's kind of equivalent to killing it in many cases and gives you life, kind of that big stopgap card. Not to mention, it is even if you've got nothing else going on, it's a 7-mana 8/8, which is nothing to shake a stick at either. So a very nice card. And if you're drafting this deck, a couple things to keep in mind. You will usually be more than 2 colors because you're going to want to play a lot of different towns. So you'll splash 3, 4, colors, whatever. We'll go maybe even all 5 if you're going wild. And those off-color towns are okay, right? Maybe you end up playing a town that is a half color you can't use. That's fine. You just need to have town critical mass to do things like discount your merchant and pick up Omega. So really fun deck to draft. I love this one. And if the towns start floating late, if they loop the table, I'm grabbing them. There's the tap lands are all the 2-color towns, and they appear in about half the booster pack. So half the packs have basic lands. The other half will have those tapped town duels. So there's going to be a lot of towns floating around in the draft because there's also plenty of other towns on top of those.
All right, and that is our look at the limited archetypes for Magic the Gathering Final Fantasy. Previews are continuing tomorrow and Thursday, and then Friday is the full card image gallery, and that is everything at that point, leading into the pre-release following weekend. Let's put the last graphic up there. So we are almost here. It has been a really long journey for us to get to the pre-release, the release, but any final thoughts? This is the last kind of show before.
Palms are sweating just thinking about it. It's finally here. It's finally about. No, my only final thought. I said this at PAX, and I'll say it every time you see me. I really hope you have fun. We made this set for you. I really hope you enjoy it. I hope you go play your favorite game again. I hope you try a new game that you found a cool card in the set.
And it's so special. We've been working on this for a long time, and to finally think pre-release is a couple weeks away, and you have to go actually out and play and see everyone playing. I am so stoked. And I think, we talked about limited a lot today. I think the limited format is really fun, and I cannot wait to go try it out. I know I'm going to be trying it out on Magic the Gathering Arena too. So go check it out, and I hope you have fun with it.
All right. Thank you for tuning in. Thank you, too, for taking us on a tour of Final Fantasy. Next week, we'll be here to crack some packs. So if you want to get a look at what the pack opening experience is going to be like ahead of the pre-release,
Yeah, Robert.
we're going to do that on the show next week. So tune in then. Until then, we'll see you next week.
All righty. Well, I was just up and sorting, so some interesting stuff that we saw today. We might cover more. Pretty much do the best of for Thursday, and I'm going to be researching some information. And Bob might help out too. We'll see if I can delegate others so we can give you the best info. But we want to crack the code. What's going on with distributors? What's going on with the Final Fantasy orders? We'd like to see what we can find out. So it's a work in progress. We'll see you guys Thursday for sure for some MTG Roundtable at 8 p.m. Eastern, 5 p.m. Pacific Standard Time. Do check in. I hope we can get some people in and discussing what is all going on in the LGS. And of course, so what's going on behind the scenes with the distributors. It's been a lot of crazy stuff happening leading up to release and pre-release here. So crazy times. We'll discuss that further. But again, thanks for tuning in, guys. I'm not sure that I'll be streaming tonight or what's going on Wednesday, but for sure I will check in with you guys, of course, for MTG Roundtable. So I hope you guys have a great rest of your day, and we'll catch you later. Bye.